All right. Peace and blessings, family. Welcome to African Spiritual Conversations. I hope you all are doing well on this middle of the week. It's Wednesday. How are you doing, Yay?
I'm fine. It's called Hump Day.
Yep. Get over that hump. I don't know, the days seem
Yeah.
like they running into each other for me. So I just like, okay. Seem
Yeah.
like it's just running into each other. But
Well,
I'm
they are.
grateful.
They are, but this is the hump of it.
Right.
So once you get past Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's over. You
It's like
know?
going
Now you're on the downside of it.
right. So yeah. Today I want to make sure I really utilize your time because it's yeah Wednesday for me, no with you, and I want to talk about ancestral wisdom and knowledge, and I sometimes hear if y'all looking at like what's wrong with her eye, I have pink eye, so I'm coming down the other side of this pink eye, but I wanted to ask you about ancestral wisdom, and when you hear that, what is the definition of ancestral? First of all,
Okay, I think that because how I see it versus how others may see it, um, might have some variation. But when I look at ancestral, just the word ancestral, we're talking about millenniums behind. What we talk about in terms of what makes you an ancestor. What makes a person an ancestor is not just that they died, not just because you love them, but that they were a part of a community. They were loved by family, affiliations, friends, community, and that they uh, lifted other people's lives while they were living. Okay. And when they died, they continued to lift those people's um, lives by things of that we remember about them. So another criteria for ancestor is that a lot of people don't know this is that if a person dies at home in their bed with their family surrounding them, not many people do nowadays. Okay, but that was one of the criteria was that a person when they made their transition, they were at home. They were with their loved ones. They weren't dying on the street in accidents. They weren't dying in hospitals. They were at home. Okay, so that was another way of looking at that. So that makes an ancestor. The wisdom of it also comes from the repeating of things said by those ancestors. Okay. The coming to memory about, my grandmama said this and this and this. And you remember that when you're going through a trial. You remember that when tribulation is coming through. And it gives you comfort when you're going through a crisis so that when things are becoming overwhelming you can remember the things that my like for me it wasn't just my grandmother. We had a name for them which was Grangie. So Grangie number one was the big mama. Okay. Grangie number two was my grandmother. So I was blessed to see my great grandmother and my grandmother, and for them to live to be elders. And in listening to them over about, don't worry about what those people think. You need to come above that. Raise them up to your level. And they always call me Patty. Raise them up to your level, Patty. You don't go down to theirs. You raise them up to yours. Okay? Because see, I was a scrapper. So like if somebody gave me just as good as I could give just as good as I could get.
Mm.
So if they, if somebody stepped to me as a kid, I didn't care who it was. In terms of other kids, rather. I wasn't trying to mess with none of my elders like that. Not even my big sisters, okay? But I would step back, and it's like it was like you either go whoop me or I'm gonna whoop you. Okay. So my grandmother and great grandmother would say, don't do that, baby. You don't do that. You are made of different stuff. You make
Mm.
them come up to your level. You don't go down to theirs. Okay. So they were teaching me at a young age how to be a woman, a thoughtful woman, not
Mm.
just to be a woman in the street getting ready to box with anybody, but they wanted me to think and to use those steps, cool the situation down, diffuse the situation, and you move forward. So when I get into those situations to this day, I remember Grangie telling me, Grangie number one, saying, you don't go down to their level, baby. You bring them up to yours. And I can
Mm.
always hear her. I can always feel her and see her. So that's what I understand about. And she died in her bed. She died
Mm.
with all of us around the bed. She had her last say, okay? And she left us. Okay. To this day, I make my when I do make my bed, I make my bed just the same way she did.
That's
You
awesome.
know, with those frilly, bed ruffles around and
Mm-hmm.
Chanel covers and stuff like that. Because that's imprint. She imprinted on me. So I
Mm.
remember those things. And so those are, that's just an example of
Okay.
what I see as ancestral wisdom. Okay. And what they
Is,
passed on.
right. Is that something that, what if you did not have what you have in terms of as a elder or like your grand, you call it Gramsci? What was that?
Grand G. Grand G.
Grandee, Grandee.
Uh-huh. Like
So for people who did
grand
not
and then J.I.
yeah, Grandee. I like that. So how do people become privy to ancestral wisdom if they did not have elders or ancestors that they knew of?
Well, let's look at, okay. We have got a couple of avenues. Okay. Um, I would like to look at spiritual development. Okay. Things that other people, your teachers, your community leaders, if you didn't have ancestors that or people that were elders in your family, because in the 21st and 20th century, that was becoming difficult to find too. Okay. The fact that we have men and women that are now living longer, okay, is a plus. People who step up and want to be a part of another person's life, a younger person's life, and stepping up is becoming back to the norm. At one point, there was a period of time, I'd say like in the 90s, that some of that was people were stepping back away from because away from those kind of activities of being intercessions for or yeah intercessions for other young people. Not too many people were doing that. Okay, simply because you had legal liability. Okay, when I was growing up, okay, we had Miss Brown across the street. We had Ma Houston. We had Reverend Sinclair. We had the Browns, We had these men and women who, if they saw you doing something on the street, They
So,
get you. And after they get you, they take you, grab you by the scruff of the neck, and they would take you to your mama and say they did this, 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 and this. Okay. And then you got it by your mama and your grandmama, everybody else. Okay. Because you weren't going to grow up to be, as my mama would say, mannish. You wasn't going to grow up to be just any old kind of way out here on the street. So by the early 90s, people were stepping away from the responsibility of that kind of care in the community. Not everyone, but there were a lot of people who looked at it as legal liability. If I say something to this kid, am I going to go to jail? Because they might think this is wrong with me. Am I going to have a problem with them because they might think this is wrong? Okay. Um, when I was growing up, you couldn't just pop up into and do anything out there on the street because you knew Miss Brown. Matter of fact, my little story was Miss Brown did, I was going down 43rd Street and Checkers Club where Bobby Blue Band and everybody was playing. They were open and they were doing rehearsals. And I went to Forestville, which was on 44th and Forestville. And I had to walk all the way from Forestville, going back west, coming home over to over near King Drive. So I'm going by the club and I'm hearing this Gut Bucket Blues, and it like made me feel some kind of way. And I'm 12, 13 years old. I ain't got no business over there in no grown folks club. And I'm standing over there shaking my butt to this, and Miss Brown saw me. Miss Brown came up behind me and said, I'm going to tell your mama right now. Okay. Now, mind you, we didn't have cell phones. She went home and called my mama. Okay. And that meant I had to hurry up and get home because my mama came off her job. Okay. And came to get me. All right. And my mama beat my butt for being in the club doing the hoochie coochie dances, she called it. Those are grown men over there. Now, it was women there, but she's howled about only was the men there. And I'm like, but there's women there. I just like the music. But she didn't want me to get a bad reputation. And so that was the community still coming up and protecting children in the community. Because what if, even in the broad daylight, one of those men had accosted me? Okay. What if? And she was trying to protect me from that kind of situation happening to me. So that's what I'm saying, that now by the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, there was legal responsibility. If you had something to say to someone's child, you needed to have witnesses. Okay. It was a place where they were not, they weren't doing that anymore, where they would stop children from bad behavior or precocious behavior. They did things when I was coming up that they couldn't do anymore. And that was a difficult thing, because I think what happens is we create some of the major problems that we're looking to get away from. Accountability in our community for elders to be accountable to those that are junior. I was blessed. Okay. I was blessed to have that. Wasn't just in my family, but the community leaders. Jesse Ma Houston, who had the Jesse Ma Houston Prison Ministry out of Operation Push. That was my mentor. Okay. She had every summer vacation Bible school, and she made sure the kids had everything, their books, their candy, their everything at the end of the summer. Okay. There was a place for parents to take their children, and she wasn't getting paid for that like that. But she was being a mother to a whole community when mothers had to go to work every summer. And that's, how often do we see that? We don't see that anymore. And listening and hearing the things that she told me as a child, you know, she, along with other women, taught me the value of being a good woman and a good person. Okay. And trying to protect my heart, my mind, my everything. They encouraged me to be better in the community. By the early 90s, that a lot of people were taking care of their own. They weren't looking at others coming in and taking care of your children the same way that you should be taking care of your children. So those were problems that were taking place by the 90s. Okay. And my blessing was that I didn't have that. But it also taught me to, with ancestors, to value those people that left here. Value the words and the wisdom that they gave us. The other side is that ancestral memory is scientifically is cell memory. The things that we get from the parents to the parents to the parents. That's our science. Okay. And so that's a part of us. But it's not as important, I don't think, as what goes down and is passed down generation after generation. Yeah. When I look at it, there was only 12 and 13 years difference between my great grandmother and my grandmother in age. Because in the South, a lot of people, a lot of men tried to make money on farms, then get their own land, and then they married younger women. I think we saw that in The Color Purple. Okay. They married younger women, which was legal then. Okay. And they would have a lot of kids to help work the farm. So my great grandmother was only 13 years younger than my grandmother. My grandmother was 19 years younger than my mother. But yet my mother, with the pushing of my great grandmother and my grandmother on her to educate, then it became my mother had to go to college because she had to do better than them. So those are the voices that we hear. I still hear some of their stories. Okay. And that's the beauty of it. You know, those kind of stories that tell me about their resilience. And that's also a part of what I think ancestral wisdom is. It's about resiliency. Okay. Because that's important. How well can you withstand the trouble of the day? How well can you bounce back? And who do you help? Who helps you bounce back? Okay. Elders taught you that. Um, I had Mother Moffat, okay, as a babysitter. When she died, she was 103 years old. And Mother Moffat um would tell me stories about slavery and how she survived. She survived all 6 of her sons. Okay. She buried 6 of her sons. And being one of my caregivers, okay, as a child, I could hear, she would tell me things about meditation and being not only being prayerful, but girl, go over there and sit in that corner and meditate. Think about you and God. Think about what you're going to do. And these are the people that I had. I was telling someone earlier this morning that I think I have lived the majority of my life with old people. And that's seated in me as well. So you look at, what that looks like and how that's going to play out. That's what I look at as ancestral wisdom and how it enacts in our life. Okay, just the memories of it. And walk with it. Okay. Mm. Your mic's not on.
I'm sorry. Okay. So as you were talking, I was thinking about, have you found yourself going through some of the same things your ancestors gone through, like the women in your line in particular, like, just in life and living and
Oh
loving and
yeah. And some of it good, some of it not so good. Okay. Um, my mother was married twice. My grandmother was married more times than I care to think about. Okay. She's a beautiful woman. But I think that, yeah, I do. I find myself having, but it's not always a bad thing. Okay. Um, my my predecessors were no nonsense women. So the men had to be no nonsense men. My grandfather was a no
mm,
nonsense man. Okay. He worked the railroad. My daddy worked the railroad. Okay. My uncle, okay, my uncle was a gambler. Okay. So we talking about a street man. So they worked hard, they played hard. Okay. But they took care of their family. Period. They went to work. And when I think about my grandfather and my great grandfather were both men, railroad and daddy were all railroad men. And what they went through in the 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s on the railroad as Pullman porters, they were
mm.
spat on by white folks. They were kicked. They were jumped on. Okay? They went through hell and had to smile. Okay? And from that, they amassed property. They took their money that they worked for and bought buildings, fixed them up, put people in. They made, and my grandmother was the person who took care of the buildings while my grandfather was on the road. Okay? So that's why I mean, what else they going they taught me, those men taught me the value of hard work.
Mm.
Okay? You rode your own, another saying they had, you had to ride your own horse. Okay? Ain't nothing gonna come in this world for nothing.
Mm.
You're gonna ride that horse on your own. Go out there and make your money. Or the other thing that they would say, those that came out of the Indiana steel mills are my relatives. Okay. They talked about, you better drop that iron, girl.
Mm.
That man, you make that man drop that iron. You make him, you do not let him sit in the house on his behind, as my grandmama would
Mm.
say. You got to go to work. You got to pay your bills. You got to put your kids through school. You have to be in here and be the spiritual leader of your family. Okay. And those are the things they taught me. I never, so when I looked at the men of my family, they took care of us. They took care of me. My grandfather, when I would get mad with my mama and my grandmama for making me do something, one day I called myself running away from home. Who found me? My grandfather. He walked the streets of Chicago up and down asking people, "You seen Patty?" And he didn't get me. When he found me, I was crying on the corner. 'Cause I really didn't want to run away. I wanted to go home. And he said, "Look, baby girl, they just want you to grow up to be a good woman. That's it. It's hard out here." And I didn't know what they were going through. We talking about the 50s, the 60s, what they went through. They were going up and handing the state's attorney hand, where you couldn't go across 43rd Street in Halston without getting your butt kicked by white folks. That's what they went through. You couldn't go sit in Woolworth's restaurant to have a cup of coffee. You couldn't go and sit and have dinner with your family for an outing and a show unless you in your own neighborhood. You couldn't go downtown and have dinner like everybody else. They went through degradation, discrimination, and all types of hell. But they did it with class. They were resilient. So by the time I realized after reading history books and stuff that, oh my God, they went through that. My grandfather went through that. Okay. And seeing that, he's being kicked. Couldn't even give him a tip. You gonna kick him? You know. So I'm understanding what resilience is because of what they did.
You said some sayings. I really love hearing sayings. This one I never heard that for make the man drop that iron.
Uh-huh.
So I wrote that down. But what are some of the other sayings you heard growing up amongst your elders? Sayings.
Oh, Lord, today. That's one right there.
I like that. I wrote that down. I was like, I wrote that down straight up.
That was, you never let anybody live off of you. Okay. You make this person be responsible. So we all had, like the other kids had, and I really I had a level of resentment until I realized the value of what they were giving me. One of
Mm.
the things was like a neighbor across the street. She didn't have to work for her allowance. I'm like, I got to take out the trash, wash the dishes, keep my room clean, sweep the floors, okay? All to get 25 cents at the end of the week. What you gonna do with 25 cents? Okay? And my mama would say, you know, you have to earn your keep. That's what you have to do. You have to earn your keep. You just can't sit up in here. Now, At the end of the day, she didn't have to give me 25 cents more. My brother's 25 cents at the end of the week. She didn't have to do that. But she wanted us to learn the value of work and being paid for it. So that was, you had to earn your keep. And that by itself was a lot. Okay.
Hmm. So okay, so there's some key things in this ancestral wisdom and knowledge you shared about making people earn their keep and earn their way, being able to take care of yourself, not letting people live off you. See, all that to me is ancestral wisdom. I mean, that's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, things that you would watch them do. And I don't know. I
And
remember
charity.
in charity, yeah. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember my mom being very proud, or even if you were making beans for somebody else, there was always an exchange. You
Right.
just didn't take the beans like, thank you, we so poor. It's like they may do something for you. So there always was this exchange, between
Mm-hmm.
people. You just didn't go over and offer charity.
Oh, absolutely.
There's always some
Yeah.
kind of exchange.
And because of many of them being in the church, okay,
All right.
and the church was not. I don't think it was just a religious experience, as oh they were just Christians. Okay, I think that there was the Christianity that we grew up with wasn't the same. Okay, offshoots of that became social clubs. My grandfather was a Mason. My grandmother was an Eastern Star. Okay, my mother was an Eastern Star, an American Woodman. Okay, you had all these different offshoots that became part of the Northern District Association of Colored Women. Okay, my grandmother did work, okay, social work in terms of they went to girls' homes because at that time, and it was a lot of black girls that got pregnant and had to go to a home. Okay, legally, yeah, legally in the 50s and the 60s, you couldn't get pregnant. It was illegal for you to get pregnant. They would put your butt in a home for girls because you were pregnant. They would take you out of school because they didn't want you to contaminate other girls by you being pregnant. So my grandmother, my mother, and great grandmother all worked in those social areas. My grandmother taught horticulture. So she taught young girls how to garden and grow your own food in the city. Because sometimes you might have to do that in order for you to survive. Do you know how? They taught them things that they had not learned in the home. Skill sets. Do you know how to make a bed? Do you know how to cook? Do you know how to sew? Can you sew clothes that have been torn? Now, sometimes you have to learn those little small skills in order for you to grow. But young girls, right, someone said homes for unwedded mothers. Yes. When girls got pregnant, especially black girls, they put them in homes for unwedded mothers. And that's how that's where a lot of young girls went to. But it also created institutionalization.
Hmm.
And that's hell right there.
So yeah, yeah. Did they like get to go back to their families, or I know about them
When
sending people down south and stuff like that. 'Cause I have
in
not had heard.
Chicago, no, huh? In Chicago, if you got caught up in the system, you ended up going to homes for girls. There was one that was right on 40, right off of 46 and Drexel. Okay. Yeah. Or if you got in trouble, they would snap, and the police got caught up with you and you got convicted. You ended up going for a home for girls. Okay. They would take you out of school. And actually, your education was to continue in the school. Okay. But continue in the home. Okay. And they had teachers and other things, but you were taken away from your family. And that took place. I knew a lot of girls that happened to. That's where the term the shotgun weddings. A lot of people that got pregnant, if they had fathers in the home, and the family would go after the boy and make them get married. Okay. And then, okay, otherwise, and then a few of them, they didn't have a choice. Okay. So those
Wow.
kind of situations were, yeah, what did you do with that?
Wow.
Okay.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
deep right there. That's really
There
deep.
was a lot of things happened during those days, and especially in the 50s and 60s. Okay. That to our community. And again, what I'm saying is that they created either you could either go down one path or the other. Oh,
Wow.
you could grow up and do everything that you needed to do in order to make it, or you could go by the way of the negative path. Okay,
Hmm. I
if
never
you
even.
had family to go around to surround you, then yeah, there's a greater possibility that things were going to go out better for you.
Mm, mm, mm.
But yeah.
Wow. Dear sister on here said that she said she remembered the homes for unwedded mothers. She also
Hmm.
said they gave the babies up for adoption. Some did, and then and they had no choice in that matter.
Legally, no, they did not have a choice. Okay, because those rights were taken by the state. Okay, so that's during that time, that's when a lot of people, girls especially, um, rather than tell I'm 13, I'm 14, I'm 15, I'm 16. Okay, they lie about their age. If you got caught shoplifting in Chicago and you 15, you better tell them you 18. Okay, because if you was 15, you go into that home for girls. If you're 18, you gonna go to Cook County jail. And
Mm,
the process, if you get somebody to bail you out, then you be okay. Okay. But the process was that now you're exposed to adults
mm,
that will, adults that can hurt you, women and men that will hurt you. That's a whole different kind of crowd,
mm.
whole different kind of people.
Do
So
you
you
see?
had, mhm.
No, I'm sorry. Do you see any similarities between young people today and say when the people who are elders now back in the day, like in the 50s and 60s, do you see any similarities between then and now? Because I didn't even consider some of this stuff.
What I see is aging. Okay. What I don't see is respect. One of the things I think I might have said it to you, my mama would say that I don't want your love, but I demand your respect. what she meant and what she was saying to me. If I don't have your respect, I really don't have your love. Respect is holding someone in high esteem. What I see these days are a lot of kids who would drop at a drop of a hat, cuss an elder out. Okay. And when I was growing up, there wasn't, that was sacred ground. I could say a lot of things, but what I wasn't going to do was raise my voice to an elder, speak negatively to an elder. I wasn't going to cuss around in their earshot, okay, to an elder. It was about respect, holding them in high esteem. Mother Moffat had the whole community loved her. Not just one church in Chicago, hundreds of churches knew her and loved her. We held her in high respect. There's no way in the world I would cuss around her, at her, or anything like that. Okay? Because she's the one that taught me about God. She's the one that taught me how to take care of me too. You don't do that. But what I see today, I see so many young people that don't respect their own parents, let alone others. And I'm not saying that sometimes it might not have been deserved, but at some point, what you dish out, you can get back somewhere down the road. So I'm not going to be that person that want to dish out that kind of evil and negativity to an elder because I know that's coming back to me. If an elder is saying things that may be inappropriate, I have the power to say, I understand, thank you, and walk away. You don't have to go toe for toe. Okay? You can just walk away. And I learned to do that. I didn't agree with everything that may have been said to me, but I'm not going to disrespect them by cussing them out and calling them out their names. Okay? Reaping coals in your head. Yes, I can see that. Someone said, Grandma would say, you reaping coals on your head. And that's the truth. Or you getting ready to see hellfire in the room. Okay? Because that would happen too.
I often think, though, that I agree with everything you said. I often think sometimes that's what we're missing. Like sometimes I hear seasoned people and young people say it's a new day, but it's really the
It
same
is.
day. And I don't mean to say it like that. You're just younger in the day, and then if you're granted that blessing, you'll be older
In
in the
that
day.
day.
You know what I
Right.
mean? But I think that wisdom that is lost is when you would hear those old sayings, and then it will play like birds together, flock together, stuff like that. Guilty
Right.
by association. I would hear those things play in my head when I probably was getting ready to get into some trouble or get caught up in
Mhm.
something somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be. I could just hear my mom be like, "Ain't nobody gonna know that. You just
Right.
guilty. You were standing there with the person, even though you didn't do anything." So it's just like that wisdom, like that. Make that man drop that iron.
Yeah.
That to me makes sense. I think that was a nicer way of saying, you don't give away things when uh,
Well, what they said, you don't give away the milk when you can buy the cow, something like that.
free. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody buys the. Yeah,
Buy the
Nobody
milk when you can get the cow for free.
right. See stuff like that, and so people that had a lot to do with your worth.
Mm,
Some of this stuff was about to help you understand how things work. Um, what was another one I heard? Something about lion doesn't chase. It's like saying if you there, like I can't remember saying, but it's something like no one no one chases a gazelle that's not running or something like that. Like, you know,
uh-huh.
using men like they don't really pay much attention to you when you just kind of giving it away or not,
Right.
putting up having any standards or anything. Can't remember that saying. I always say I want to do a book of just sayings because I would always say it and be like, what was that? You know, because I just think that's so awesome. You know what I mean? But I also think it's a way
It
of
is.
passing down wisdom and knowledge and things you should think about when you're out in the world doing stuff, and you
You
know that's
know,
not who you are.
I think that growing up in Chicago was a really helpful experience, and growing up in a very political time was a great experience for me. The people then had this way of being, walking, that demanded attention. You know, they weren't shuffling, walking to work and stuff. My mother, no matter what, you see her throw her shoulders back and she'd make it to the bus stop, and get on the bus and the whole 9 yards. It was like she's proud to go do a day's work. You know, um, my mother would have ran away before she would have cussed or said anything around her mother. Okay, that it just you just didn't do it. I see that. I understand where you have young people who have their opinion and their opinion is valued. Okay. But there's also a thing about um being polite and being careful about what you say. Because sometimes you might have to live to eat those words. Okay. And that's not the thing you want to do. Sometimes you will bite off more than you can chew, as they say. Okay. Because in that instance, you have said something, once it's out your mouth, you can think it all day, but once it comes out your mouth in another person's earshot, you got to live with that. Okay. And that's the thing that I was always careful. I'm looking around to see if my mama over there, my grandmama over there. I wasn't gonna do that. Okay, no way.
The I used to love it when older people would say something and they look around and then they lean in and say it like in the whisper.
Uh-huh.
I used to love that. I used to get a kick out of that because they just be like, mm. Then they got to
Yep.
check the perimeters before they say stuff. Or when they
Because
would
it would
spell
come
stuff,
back.
that used to make me laugh when they would spell stuff.
Uh-huh. Like you can't spell.
Yeah, but I just so those like those little courtesies, or I remember if they were talking about somebody having an illness, they would almost whisper it, like if the word could hear them. So they would say
Hmm.
the person had cancer. You'd be like,
Yeah.
what? Because you'd be ear hustling, but the word was
Uh-huh.
cancer. But they would say it so the person got cancer. Like if cancer could hear you,
Right. But the person, and also people then had a closer spiritual relationship with spirit.
right
Okay,
on.
just to bring that element in, because if we talk about ancestral, we got to talk about the spirits that are bringing that conversation too. Because I know as a kid, I saw spirits. Okay, so you knew that there was something around. I had stories about my great grandfather and my great great grandfather who were seers.
Mm,
Okay. So the seeing my mediumship isn't coming through my grandmother's. My mediumship is coming through my grandfather's.
Mm.
Okay, because they were seers, and they were the kind of seers that would see spirits on the street, you know, and have those kind of conversations, or be out in the woods having those conversations with spirits. That's where that side of me comes from. Okay.
Right on.
Um, my even my great grandmother, um, she would push us to not be don't be afraid of death. Okay. It's just a peeling off of the glove. You know, and that's how this she said, it's just peeling off the glove, baby. You know, this is no longer used right now, and you on to another adventure. So that ancestral part is also something that we need to, address too, which I don't think is done enough in any religious grouping other than African spirituality or Asian spirituality. They talk more about the afterlife and what to expect than say Christian dogma. Okay. So we have to also address that. See, one of the things that my mother said, um, she was driving past what was it, Calumet High School on 81st and May in Chicago. And this was not too much longer after she had, before she had passed away. And she was driving ahead of some teenagers that was in the car behind her. She wasn't driving fast enough. And so they peeled out behind her, skidded to the side, and cussed her out for driving too damn slow. Okay. I remember my mama coming home in tears, and she was crying. She said, "What am I leaving my legacy to? What am I leaving my legacy to?" And she told me about what these kids had done to her. Okay. I never knew that kind of anger at an elder. I never knew that kind of angst that I would, except for the woman that was in Walmart the other day that I told y'all about. I take that back. But in my lifetime, in dealing with my mother, that hurt my feelings that she had to experience that. But it also said the direction that young people were going in, that they felt free to disrespect you just because they had a right to, because they could speak their minds. And I have a problem. I actually, to this day, have a problem with that. But my problem is coming to me from what my mother experienced. Because why would you hurt my mama like that? It's just as sure as you came around and moved into the next lane and got around her, why did you have to stop and scream and holler and scare her like that? You know? So that's the kind of people that we're dealing with now, too, in some sectors. That's not saying that we don't
Yeah.
have time.
And I said, you're right.
Yeah, that's a problem to me. But I think
I agree.
in our communities that we're doing a little bit better. I don't think that those kids are doing that. Not, I don't see a lot of African traditional children being that disrespectful because I think they're being taught value.
Yeah.
They're being taught behaviors that are appropriate. Okay. But we do have children out here who are problematic in terms of respect.
Well, I agree with you. I think all of that comes right down to your destiny. Because what I've always learned is what you give out is what you'll get back. And so, you know, if you're blessed enough, you'll be old yourself or older,
Hmm.
and you may get that feeling back to you.
Yeah.
Or the other part I always tell young people, if you're gonna think it's because you're young and when something happened to you, then don't be looking for me because it's unhealthy for you to want me to come to your rescue when you disrespect me.
Absolutely.
You could have just kept going.
Absolutely.
You really didn't have to stop. And I know you're capable of keep going because other people do stuff to you, you never cuss them out.
Hmm.
So that's why I know it's capable. I just don't do a lot of excuses for bad behavior. I just feel like this is in life is like you're running up a tab, and then
Yeah.
sometimes you go to church and act like God is going to forgive all that, but that's inside of that religion. In the whole universe, you still have to pay as you go,
Right. You're
and
gonna
that's
have to drop
where,
that iron.
yeah, you sure are. You're absolutely correct. You're
Hmm.
absolutely correct. So yeah, yeah. Thank you for today. Like this was a great conversation. I needed to hear all that you have to say. I could like listen for hours because that's how I'm wired. Because I think it's so important for us to hear this information and to apply it.
Yeah, it
You know,
is. It's
um,
important.
it's applied knowledge, and I think for some people may not have lived as long, but because they dropped such wisdom, that you find yourself saying stuff and you don't even know the origin of where you got that from. Like I may have gotten it from my mom, but it could have came from her grandma. I don't
Right.
know. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's I always feel so grateful about that. Like, man, just having those healthy sayings is like, okay. Sometimes we talk to each other like that in front of people. They have no idea.
Uh-uh. They don't.
They have
If you
no
heard
idea.
none, none, they have none. Seeing people in my generation and older, because my sisters would be in their 80s, okay, and they're no longer here, okay. So that was a whole because my sisters were respectively 13, 14, and 17 years older than me, okay, and my brothers under us. So I grew up hearing their conversation along with, because my big sisters. So I'm like the little girl looking like, oh, this is my big sister, and I felt good about that. And I heard those different conversations that they had. Okay. And then with coupled with that, and my mom and my grandmother and aunt, all of those people that taught me about living and applying that wisdom that are no longer here in the physical,
Mm,
okay? But where they are in the spiritual is here in my heart, here in my head, you know, because they applied that living, you know. They worked hard. They played hard, they worked hard, okay? And they didn't take no stuff off of anybody other than what they had to in order to survive.
right on. I definitely think that's a key piece of word that we got to keep reminding. And I just don't think for some of us we're in that time. Like I almost hate it when people try to compare where we are right now to where people have been. I just be like, dude, you never will understand what happened to these people for real.
No,
Please
you
don't.
don't. You
Please
can't.
just you can move around. You can get all. It's just what I don't think we understand how confined people were. And so if you bust out that box and try to really live, that
Mhm.
could cost you your life.
It did alter your life, okay? Because you didn't have everybody that was going to back you up, okay?
That's real
That
talk.
was it. Because you're making, my mother, out of the women that lived when she moved, she got mad at my grandmother and moved out of the family property. She moved us directly into the projects, girl. You know, I'm like,
Uh,
oh God, you know, I had hell.
oh wow. You're like, great move,
Raised to
mom.
be, I was raised to be a bougie girl. Okay. I had to change, I had to learn a new language and everything.
That is too funny.
Okay.
That is too funny.
Oh girl, it was a mess. Okay. You
Well,
know,
hold on.
you learn.
That's
You
right.
learn.
You learn to
Okay.
adjust.
That's why I talk about being resilient.
Yep.
Okay. Because at that point, you better be, you know, or you better know how to fight. I learned how to fight in the projects, baby. Okay.
That's real talk.
Okay. Shoot.
Oh.
3983 Lake Park. Okay. I knew how to fight.
uh, well,
Oh God.
Yay, I love you. Thank you so much for making
I love
time
you
for
too.
this Wednesday. I know you got a lot of stuff to do because,
Oh girl, yeah, I gotta go find some more roosters.
yeah, right on. Well,
The work
I
still
love you.
goes.
Right on.
I
Thank you
love
for
you
taking
too.
time to talk with me and build with me on this Wednesday. And I'll definitely be in touch. Thank y'all for watching African Spiritual Conversations, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace and blessings.